Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the iWorkinSport live interview. This is the show where we talk to accomplished sport business professionals who come here to share their knowledge, experience, tips, and advice in order to help you succeed in your career. If we're just meeting, my name is João Frigerio. I'm the founder of iWorkinSport, and I want to thank you for being here with us today. Let me know if this is the first time that you're coming to the show, that you're watching us live, or if you're coming back. Also, let us know in the comments, even if you're watching the replay. So if you leave the comments, I read every one of them. One thing that you could do would be super nice is actually if you let us know where you're watching from. If you don't know, I work in sport. We're a platform to help you accelerate your career in sports. Doesn't matter if you already working in sport or if you want to work in sports. We're here to help you either way. We do that by organizing events primarily. Of course, we have our website. There's a lot of content there. Check us out at iWorkinSport.com. But primarily, we do that through our events, whether connecting with recruiters in the industry or with academic programs if you want to study in one of them. Actually, our guest today did one of those programs that normally partners with us. But talking about the job fair, we actually have one coming up. Let me show you here on the screen. On the 20th of May, we'll be back in Lausanne at the Swiss Tech Convention Center. So if you want to meet recruiters from FIFA, UEFA, the IOC, FIBA, agencies like IMG, many other companies, check it out. Go to our website. There's a link in the description. You can register there. So that's going to be on the 20th of May. The other thing, just before I talk about our guest, our interview today, as you can see, I'm using this shirt that we just got it. I ordered last week, and we're trying to support as we can the Red Cross helping the situation in Ukraine. We did a small donation there, but we're also trying to collect more help. And what we're going to do is we're going to donate all the proceeds from the sales of these shirts. There's different models as well. There's in white to that cause as well. So if you would like to help, there's a link in the description as well. There's another thing. I put another link in the description. Sorry, let me talk about that right at the start. I normally have my iWorkinSport mug, but today I have this one that I just got as well on the mail. I'm supporting one of my friends that is stuck there in Kiev, and she's an artist. She does beautiful things like this painting for this mug. And yeah, so I put the link to her store there as well. So if you want to support, people in Ukraine, this is, a friend that I have that is there. So I'm trying to support as well. So anyway, it really sucks. Anyway, let me try to go back to the show. Let me introduce my guest today. We are at the International Women's Week. We had International Women's Day just a couple of days ago. So I think it's very fitting to have a woman, a mother of two with a long career in sports, being a guest in the show today. So we're going to speak with Tina Sharma. She's a PR and communications manager at the Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage. That's a department within the International Olympic Committee. So she had established a career as a journalist in India before she decided to come to Europe. So she came here to study at the AISTS in Lausanne, and she ended up staying. So first working at FISU, which is International University Sports Federation, and then at the IOC. So I'm sure she has faced many challenges, not only being a woman working in sport, but also we know that it's not easy if you're a non-European to stay in Europe and work in sport here. So there's a lot from that we can learn from her today. So I will get Tina to join us right after this. Hello, Tina. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. And hi, everyone who all are watching from wherever in the world. Very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you.
Yes, indeed. Please let us know where you're watching from. Actually, there's a few people saying hi here, so let me just give them a shout out before we go to our talk of questions. Of course, Alexandre Diaz, thanks, Alex, to facilitate here. She's a great, talking about you, Tina, she's a great example of talent and competence, proving that women in sport is mandatory. She's from Portugal.
Thank you for that.
And happy to see our kids succeeding in Switzerland as well. So.
Thank you.
We have a friend from India here, Taruka, who signs as the Planox. Absolutely, her journey is amazing.
Taruka.
Hello, Erica. Thanks. She said she likes the shirt. And we also have Regina
she
saying
probably
hi
likes
from
your shirt. I thought she meant my shirt, but she likes your shirt because yours is much better.
Well,
hi, Regina.
Yours is nice as well. So, and we have also Jack Marley here from Bath University. Hey, Jack,
Hi, Jack.
Good to see you. A few more people saying hi here now on LinkedIn.
Hi, Eddie.
Eddie saying hi. Thanks, everyone. Actually, also prepare your questions. You know that this is interactive, so you are welcome to participate as well. But before we get to that and to more questions, Tina,
Yeah.
maybe I touched it briefly in some points, but why don't you give us a summary of your career, how you started working in sports, and how you got to where you are now?
I can do that. It's going to be quite interesting because there's a lot of, twists and turns and ups and downs. But thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. I think it's important for, other 20-year-olds out there who might be at the same stage that I was at 20 years ago and wondering how to plan their career path. So always happy to share. I think that it's really important to say right from the start that I really knew that I had to work in sport. That was from day one. And day one meaning when I was, maybe 13 or 14 years old. I knew I had to work in sport. It was like, the greatest joy of my life. It was my biggest interest. And I was into a lot of sports, but I was never good enough at any of them to have any wrong notions about being a professional athlete. So I knew that I had to find other avenues in sport, and sports journalism came sort of as a natural choice for me because I was also always writing. I was in the school yearbook and the college yearbook and editing this and editing that. So I think journalism was a very natural choice for me. But having said that, when I started studying journalism, and that was for my master's, I was the only person in the class who went in and from the first day said, "I'm here to study journalism and specialize in sport." And there was no module or even a class that was related to sports journalism. It was really very much, your mainstream journalism, news and crime and politics and business. So there wasn't really anything in the program that was really catered to me. And often I was also, the person in the class who was not looking to do serious journalism because I wanted to do sport. So there was a lot of, there were some misconceptions and some myths and some stereotypes that I encountered even then. But it's been fabulous. I went on to work in print first. I worked for a national newspaper covering cricket. Naturally, coming from India, that was primarily the main sport I covered, but also tennis and golf, two other sports that I love. And I felt like I had a great foundation having worked in print. And I still, to this date, whenever I speak to young journalists, I always tell them that if you can start your career in print, that's the place to start. It makes your foundation so strong, and then you can move to television and digital and everything else Um, yeah, and then I moved to television, and I was a sports anchor and a sports reporter and a sports producer for the longest time. And then, as you said, I moved to Switzerland, to Europe in 2017 to do Master of Advanced Studies in Sport Management at the AISTS. And things just one thing after another. I started working here, and I had an amazing stint at the International University Sports Federation. Really got to understand how the federation world works. And now I'm at the Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage, um, uh, leading the comms here, and really joining two of my passions, because I also have always loved art. And it's just it's interesting because they're very much at two ends of the spectrum, sport and art, and they don't always go together. And it was always something that was a hobby on the side while I followed my love for sport. But this role, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more, is it gives me a great opportunity to combine both my great passions. So loving it. Sorry, it was a very long introduction and summary of my career.
No, that's great. This is just a start. We do have a few things in common. Cricket is not one of them. I know nothing about cricket, but I was a journalist as well, although I don't really have a successful career working in journalism. But I think, like you, I chose journalism because of my passion for sport. I knew that I wanted to do something related to sport, and I chose journalism because of that.
Yeah.
But then I decided that actually I wanted to do something in a different area of sport. That's when I also left my country, in this case Brazil, to come to study, and so we have some similarities there.
Yeah.
Well, just before we go to a few others, there's a lot of people also saying hi here. I'd like to acknowledge, or try to acknowledge everyone. Don't know if it's maybe Eddie. We already said hi. There is Ella.
Hi, Ella.
From Loughborough University, watching on YouTube. We have Sally O'Brien on
Hi,
LinkedIn.
Sally.
Tina's energy is infectious. She's a powerhouse and a great colleague. Great to know. There's a couple of questions from Taruka here. We're going to acknowledge that in a second. Ashin Sharma. Oh,
Hi, Achin.
who's that?
Former colleague.
But with a
Also
similar
someone.
last name. I thought it was a relative.
No, it's not. It's a common one in India.
We have also Otacílio in Brazil, likes the shirt, wants a XXL. Go to go to the store. There's a link in the description. Christy saying hi.
Hi.
And well, people are very active today. Great to see you all. Miguel Macedo here in Portugal. Thanks for joining us. Prepare your questions. Tina, so you told us how you got to where you are, but tell us a bit more about your work than what you do there. What's your normal day like?
Okay, well,
If there is a normal day.
yeah, no, I was gonna say normal day is a very interesting description because I don't know how many normal days I've had. Um, but yeah, it's so I'm basically I'm looking after communication and public relations for the foundation. And maybe even before I describe what I do, it's important to kind of just very briefly give an overview of what the foundation does. So the Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage is the body or the department of the IOC, which is responsible for the preservation of Olympic history, all the Olympic heritage, arts and culture programs, also Olympic values education, and various things like that. So it includes, for example, the Olympic Museum, which is a very well-known entity preserving culture and heritage of the Olympic Games. But it also includes, for example, the Olympic Studies Center, which is probably, the world's, it's the best place in the world for Olympic knowledge, research. It also includes international arts and culture programs, which are a very, very important part of what we do at the games, at the Olympic Games, and heritage management, which is it's really what we see at the museum, for example, is the tip of the iceberg, and the huge amount of work that goes into acquiring, preserving, documenting these collections, and then making them available for partners and other people around the world. So there's a huge, this huge sort of cultural work that this department, the Foundation for Culture and Heritage, is doing in the Olympic movement, and I think it's really exciting to be the person kind of entrusted with the global communications for this. So my normal day could be, it could be either really dealing with press requests, for example. So there's, just straightforward media relations, press requests, questions about the museum, the exhibits, but also questions about our programs and our global programs in general. It could be that we are working on, let's say, communications for a specific project, which means we're looking at, articles. So it could be plain writing. There could be a day where I'm really doing the writing. I'm working on the articles for that particular project, or I'm working on a press kit for that project. Or then I could be looking at the more sort of, macro PR level, and really looking at positionings and strategies and sort of common threads and where we want to be 6 months from now, or, plotting that sort of thing. So never a dull moment, I can promise you that, and lots of things to do. So I was also, for example, I was at the Tokyo and the Beijing Games, and really kind of working on our on-site programming, the arts and culture programs, and also the heritage collections. Um, because there's so many different activities that my department does, it actually means that there's a huge variety of things and projects and ideas and topics that I get to work on, which is challenging, but also what makes it really fun.
Sorry, I was muted. Great, Tina. Just before I go, a few more people. Let's try to cover everyone who's commenting. At least Livia.
Hi.
Hi, Tina. Good to hear such a passionate introduction. I think so too. Oh, listen, I probably was going to talk about that more at the end, more or later. But Ashin Sharma here says the interviewer must probe Tina about her book as well. It's entitled Who? Me? So okay, Ashin, you asked, it's an order. Let's
Okay,
go to
well,
that.
thank you for the question. So I've written two books, and the first book is more of a memoir, which is and which is really tracing the sort of coming of age story of of uh, female sports journalist in India. So I'm sure you can sort of, read the subtext and read between the lines there. It's really my story. It's about growing up as a very rebellious girl in a country at a time which was perhaps a little bit more traditional than it is today. Um, and being, the girl who always wanted to play sports, who always wanted to play with boys, who always wanted to question everything, um, and how that kind of led to a certain kind of personality and the challenges that came with that, but also the opportunities that came with that. And it might sound so self-indulgent, but I really wrote it because I wanted to document that, and it really culminates. The arc culminates with this rebellious person, or let's say, the person who refuses to follow the norm or the convention, finding a space for herself in a completely male dominated world, which sports journalism was at the time. I'm talking about the early 2000s. So yeah, that's largely the
Was
story.
or is it still is? Has it changed
No,
much?
I'm really happy to say it has, Joel. It really has. I mean, I left journalism in India about 5 years ago now, and I'd already seen a massive change. And I know that today we have so many more female sports journalists in all parts of the countries at every level, working at, local level, working at national level. It's really been wonderful to see that, and I see a massive change. But it was not the case for sure 20 years ago. Yeah, so that's a little bit the story of my first book, but I think let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, can people buy it? Is it on Amazon or?
It is, yes. It's on Kindle. So yeah.
Okay, so people just go and search for it.
Thank
I'll
you.
add the link later at the description of the video for people who watch the
Okay.
replay. So you talked about many things that you do at your job. So it's really not dull. There's a lot of different things. Is there one in particular that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I would actually say the writing, which is now obvious since I just talked about my books, but I really enjoy the writing process. To me, it never feels like work. And when there's a new project or one of the team comes to me with, one of the new ideas that they have, I immediately my head starts working about, this is good and this is good and this is what I can highlight. And when I actually sit down to sink my teeth into the press release or the press kit, um, I absolutely love that process. And another thing I really enjoy is creating the content also for for the website and just working on pages for a new project and looking at the editorial line for that. So yeah, I think the part of me that's still very much a journalist at heart enjoys the writing more than anything else.
Right. And for you, I mean, that now are working in sport in a different area than, well, sports journalism. So we take it that communicating well is, let's say, a given, especially for you. But what would be the skills I think necessary, at least in your case, for you to thrive in the sports industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure if I can really speak for the sports industry in general, because I really don't claim to be an expert in any other aspect, but I can definitely talk about communication. And as you said, I mean, certain things are a given. If you're going to be in communication, naturally your ability to write or speak or, things like that, they are a given. But for me, what I found has been extremely helpful is, just being a people person. Just if it's your natural inclination to just go up to people and talk and have a conversation, and you're naturally inquisitive and you want to know more about people when you talk to them, even when you meet them for the first time, it's just who I am naturally. And I found that that's been extremely helpful for me, both as a journalist and also in communication. Just this ability to engage with people, to listen to what they really are saying, read the subtext, as I was saying before, and find the story. So I think that, yeah, this interpersonal skills is something that's really helped me. And cliched as this might sound, but focus, it's so important in any field, I suppose, in any area of work. But I have found that it's extremely important to have focus. And I practice that on a literally a daily basis, and I have practiced it through my career. And the more you implement it as a practice, the more you sort of have this, brain muscle memory to be able to do that. And for me, that's really, really important. So even if it's a skill that you're not born with, it's a skill that you can definitely work on. Setting goals, planning the steps towards those goals, giving yourself certain targets, and then working really conscientiously towards them. I think there's no substitute for that. And I think comms can be a tough world, journalism tougher, I have to say. So really sharp focus helps, I think, very, very much. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% couldn't agree more. That's very, very good advice. Um, you mentioned your passion for art. Is it
Mhm.
connected, or does it help your sport career, or is it completely separate, one thing from the other, art and sport? Do they go
I think
together, or
I don't really know. It's interesting because when I think back to like school and college, it was so funny because I was that one person who was kind of shuttling between the artsy crowd and the sporty crowd. And as you can imagine, they were two completely different sets of people back in school and college. They're usually not the same person. And then I was that like odd man who was kind of going between both. Um, but I found it's helped me in my career in many ways. Perhaps less so as a journalist, but once I stepped into comms, I think it's been invaluable. Also my training in art, because my first degree, which very few people know, was actually in design, and then and then I shifted to journalism. I think that's come in handy in comms, because comms really encompasses so much more than just the written word, right? There's so much visualization, even when you're designing web pages or a press kit or just a simple flyer or anything like that. I think the ability to, yes, to have an aesthetic and to have an eye, I think has helped in comms very much. I've been able to work with graphic designers with a lot more ease than I think I would have been able to if I'd not had that background in art. And then also, yeah, I mean, currently in my current position, it comes really in handy because we are actively working with artists and actively working with art. For example, there's a program which is the Olympian Artists in Residence, which we've had for several past edition of the games. And I think just the ability to be able to understand art um, is of immense help to me as I craft my communications around them.
Well, that's very interesting. Shawan Wen echoed art and sports. Pablo Rossetti says, hello, Tina. Really great to see you.
Hi, Pablo.
There are more comments and questions arriving here. I can see. Keep them coming. I'll get to them in a second. But Tina, before we talk about that, I want to talk about the challenges you faced, right? Being a woman and a mother working in sports, with all the travels, must not be easy. That's something I don't know, and I won't ever know exactly how it feels like. But
Yeah.
maybe this is part of the challenges. Maybe there are others. I'd like to know maybe what are the biggest challenges that you have faced.
Yeah, I mean, the just like let me start off by saying that I in no way do I want to be seen as playing victim when I say any of this. I truly believe in a completely equal world. I truly believe that we are all working towards a level playing field. But yes, there have been challenges, and I think it's important to address them so that as we go forward, hopefully we see a reduction in these challenges or a change in mindset. So, you asked me about the biggest challenge, and I think that for me initially, as a 21, 22-year-old entering the world of sports journalism was exceptionally difficult. The set sports journalists of the era were, brilliant men, great writers, great presenters, and reporters, but majority men. And honestly, at the time that I entered the field, I can truly say that there were maybe 3 or 4 of us women in the country. And India is a big country, all right, doing sport at the time. And I'm speaking on a national level. There may have been, some probably local newspaper writers or something that I'm not aware of. But really, at a time when I was trying to break into this world, there were literally 3 or 4 of us who were sort of contemporaries. Definitely one of them, the pioneer, and a shout out to her. She knows who she is. And it was really hard because the mindset of most of the sports editors, without even realizing it, was, does she even know sport? And the mindset was so deep rooted that it was really, really difficult to shake them out of it sometimes. And even just going for job interviews and applying for jobs, um, it was acutely humiliating sometimes, because I would apply for a job and I know, like, for example, I know I would be a good fit for it. And I was asked questions like, what do you think you would like maybe prefer to work in our fashion section? And I'm not making this up. Like, these are real questions that have been asked to me in interviews. Or for example, somebody else asked me, do you want to cover sport because you want to meet like a male athlete? And it was so insulting, um, to me as a woman, but also just to my brain. I mean, this is not what I'm going to choose a career for. So I think getting around some of those extremely deeply set mindsets was very, very difficult. And then even when I got the opportunity, when I And I have to say, the editor who asked me if I would be better off in the fashion section is eventually the one who took a chance on me, because I told him, no, I would not want to work in the fashion section. I can serve coffee in the sports department, but you're going to put me in the sports department. So he gave me the job, and that was my first break. And then when I started there again, it was the same thing. Like, I was sent to cover certain sports, mostly at the local level, because as a rookie reporter, of course, you're not covering like international sport. So I'd be covering like, domestic cricket, for example. And I still remember that the first report, I used to live, breathe, eat, sleep, dream cricket at the time. And I was damn good writer. So the first report I wrote on this match, I know it was really good. And then I submitted it, and the sports editor asked me, without meaning to insult me, so who helped you with this? It's just the automatic mindset was, you couldn't have done that yourself. And it was really, really hard to break that. And the only way that not just me, but all those other women who were kind of, the early female sports journalists in India, I think what we had to do was be twice as good and work three times harder than our male colleagues, and that's the truth. And then we got somewhere. But then the recognition came. So it was challenging, but not impossible. And you also made another point about being a woman who's had a family, who's had children. And while I would like to say, oh yeah, but the pressure should be equal for men and women, and it should affect your career as much as it affects mine, but the truth is that is not the case. And I chose to take a maternity break when I had my two children, and I was sort of out of action for a couple of years, and it was honestly extremely hard to come back. And you think that you're so well established and everything is great and your career is going so well, so a couple of years out of action is not going to affect you, but it really does, and you literally have to crawl and fight for your space back. And I had to eventually take the decision to really cut back on reporting, because as a reporter covering international sport, which I was doing by that time, I was spending 6 months of the year out of the country, just covering everything. And then when my kids were really young, like 2 and 3, I realized this just wasn't working anymore. I wanted to be home more for them. So I had to take a very conscious decision to cut down on the reporting and focus more on being a producer and an anchor. And I did that. And I missed reporting, but it was just it was a call I had to make.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listening to everything that you're saying, just it came to me the motto of this week's International Women's Week, which is actually break the bias. So exactly. So
Yeah.
I had a noted here. So indeed, I think it's everybody's work and mission. Not only women's, I think anyone who live in a society needs to, work towards that. As I know, I will commit many faults, being a woman and being a woman, I just made one, being a man and being unaware, what is it to be in a woman's shoes. But I think we should at least try, right, and make our best. Now, you're one of the most popular guests that I had, Tina. There's a lot of comments coming in. I will actually, I do have, of course, more questions, but I'm going to address some that are arriving here.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to ask you who are leaving the messages, if you could also, when it's at least the first time that you're writing, let us know where you're watching from. That would be great as well. There is one here from someone who I think knows you. You're talking that you wouldn't be in fashion, and Anupam Srivastava says, does she remember the day Saddam Hussein's statue was brought down in Baghdad and she was anchoring this piece on air live in New Delhi? I guess she does, if Anupam does, but tell us more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Anupam. I would love to talk about this in public. Uh, it was really funny. We were starting a new, very, very new news channel. It was a completely new news channel that had been launched. A lot of us, it was our first job in television. It was not for Anupam, who was my producer, but for me, it was my first job in television. And I was very much the sports anchor of the channel. I was doing sport. That was my thing. I used to work on like my sports bulletin. I would do my scripts. I would do my graphics and all of that. And in the middle of the, it was a morning, I think. And so, our sort of like the prime time anchors or the serious anchors were not literally physically in office. Um, and I happened to be one of the anchors in office, and had a recorded bulletin going on, and suddenly this huge momentous historical moment was happening where Saddam Hussein's statue was being pulled down. And it's, it was such a big news moment that there was no way the channel could not break out of the recorded show that was running. They absolutely had to cut to live news. And they looked around and, like, can we find an anchor? And guess who they found? It was the resident sports anchor who was sitting there, who at the time knew very little about like politics or world affairs or any of that. And I was thrust into the anchor's chair, and it was like, "Q, just go." So, and for those of you who understand television journalism, you're not always, in fact, most of the time, you're not reading off scripts, because news is live and there's stuff that's developing. So this notion of newsreaders reading a script is extremely antiquated and completely passé. That is not how it happens. But yeah, it was just like, go. And so I was on the air, trying to present to a national audience what is happening. Um, and Anupam was my producer, and at some point our systems also collapsed, and it was this, this sports anchor standing there with no scripts, no teleprompter, nothing on my laptop because the systems were down. And so my dear producer was actually crawling on the floor under the camera and passing me papers with bits of information so I could keep the live bulletin going. But yeah, unforgettable moment on air.
Very good, and kudos to Anupan as well for the help. Good work. Pablo Rossetti, who's in Mexico. Hello, Pablo. Reminds us that you also interviewed Pelé. That's a big one, big hero of mine. By the way, in the land of Pelé in Santos, there is Mamé Paulo. Hello, good to see you here. Man, Ashint, he knows a lot about you. Also says that you love the WWE.
Yeah, that's
not a problem. Not a problem in loving WWE, but in a more serious question here, he says, how difficult was the decision to take this leap of faith, switching from New Delhi to Switzerland? I mean, I know how people in India react when you decide to go for further studies upon starting a family. Tell us about that.
Really good question. Thank you, Achint. Let's ignore the WWE one. It was an extremely emotional time, because it was, as I already explained to all of you, I was always the one not doing what was expected of me, always taking unconventional paths in my life. And to be honest, I had this wish to work for the Olympic movement since I was a child, and it was always there in the back of my mind. And then I had this great career as a sports journalist, and I was so lucky. I covered Olympic Games and World Cups, and I really felt like I had done so much. And then I wanted to move to the other side of the table and really work in sport, and work for the Olympic movement. So it was, in fact, it was very much a leap of faith. And you can imagine this was at a time when I had just been handed the the most watched news show in the country. I had just taken over anchoring that, and not sport, like news. And everyone thought this was like, literally like a massive milestone moment in my career. It was, and I'm thankful for that opportunity. Um, and I had two children. We had a completely settled life in New Delhi, with a great career, great family, great home, two kids, everything. But it's like that itchy tag, the label in your T-shirt that's constantly scratching you in the back. It was like that. It was in the back of my mind, always. I have to do that. I have to do that. And at one point, it was like a question of, is it going to be too late if I leave this decision for like 5 years later? So great, amazing opportunity or not, in my field of journalism, which I really had at that time, and settled life or not, I said, you know what, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And it was I have to thank my partner, my husband, as well, for really kind of supporting me through that, because it's not an easy decision. And at the time when we announced it to our families that we're going to move to Switzerland with nothing in hand for me to do a study program and my husband to take care of the kids for 1 year. This was our plan. We had absolutely nothing else in hand. We both gave up our careers, um, uh, left this super cushy, really well settled life, and came here. And naturally, both sets of parents and family and relatives and friends, absolutely everyone thought I was crazy, and really like crazy. Like people thought I was having a midlife crisis or completely losing it. One of my closest friends, he messaged me. He was like going crazy. He was messaging me viciously, saying, "You cannot do this. You cannot ruin your life. And you're anchoring this show, and you're this, and you're that." It was so hard to actually block out that noise and stay focused on what I wanted to do. Crazy as it sounded to everybody else, for me, it was absolutely clear on where I had to go and what I had to do. And so, yeah, I didn't deviate, but it was extremely emotional because everyone, including my parents, thought I had gone completely nuts. So, yeah, you're still on mute.
Thank you. Now I can imagine. What were the age of your kids at the time?
When we moved,
Yes.
they were 7 and 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that must be big now. You've been
Yes.
here for what, 5 years? 5 years?
Yes, 5 years now. Yeah.
Right. Let's talk a bit more then about what was that experience when you came to study here. Actually, I'm going to acknowledge a question here. Well, first is Zaire Khan in Lausanne. Here in Lausanne,
Hi.
say hi. And there's Raj Yadav. He's 24, working as a software engineer. How can I make transition into sports management? He's looking at the FIFA Master. It's a good option, but not the only option, as he writes. You did that was the master I did, and
Yeah.
you did another excellent one in Lausanne, the AISTS, and there are others.
Yeah.
Raj. But let's talk about then your experience at, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it, the AI.
And your question with the question that just came from our viewer. For me, it was really clear that the step one towards changing direction has to be education. Education has always been extremely important in my life. It's extremely important, just in my mindset. And I talked earlier, Joao, about like focus and working towards targets. And this is really the modus operandi of what I do. I set a goal, and then I kind of gauge what is my distance from where I am today to where my goal is. And then what steps do I need to take? It's about every single day putting that one step in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other. If you break it down to that, you're going to reach your goal. It's as simple as that. And for me, the step one had to be education. I could have, of course, taken a chance, maybe applied for jobs here, but no, I really wanted to do education first because, and I'm thankful for having done it, because the master's program, and I'm sure this is what many of the programs are able to offer, each one having its own specific USP. But the program that I did at AISTS, what it really, really helped me with is understanding the context of this world. For me, coming into Lausanne and just maybe directly going into a job, if I were so lucky, would have been different. You would have to kind of learn the ropes as you go. You would have to kind of feel your way around and understand how the federation world works. But the masters really gave me a very good overview of how this world of international sports federations, which is largely based out of this lovely little town slash city, as I call it, they're mostly based here, majority of them, and how they work and how the governance of sport is really carried out from this nerve center, the Olympic capital of Lausanne. To be able to understand that, to really understand what are these federations, what do they do, what is their mandate, how does this world of sport work, for example, how does the anti-doping system work, for example, all of these things, it was invaluable for me to learn that and then be able to move and transition into a role which allowed me to put into practice some of the things that I had learned. And I'm not saying that any of these programs is, is perfect, and you do the program and you're handed a job the next day. No, it's, of course, you have to put in your own work, and luck plays, I suppose, some part in it. But education is a really, really good first step. And what I believe is that no matter what happens eventually, you can't go wrong. I mean, you're never going to regret having learned more or having upped your skills or being more knowledgeable. So anyway, either which way, even if things don't go exactly according to plan, you're never going to regret additional education. So
Yeah.
I always advise that as a first step to anyone looking to make a career transition.
Yeah. No, and what I found super interesting is that you mentioned several reasons why you wanted to come to Europe, what you wanted to learn, and you were already working in sport as well, as a journalist.
Yeah.
And because many people ask me if they should go and study just to find a job in sport, and I thought definitely helps. It opens doors, especially in a different setting. Of course, when you came here, you made contacts that
Yeah.
it would be more difficult for you to make while you were in India. But you were already working with that, and I tell people if they just want to work in sports, there's probably easier, faster, and cheaper ways to do it. But if they are thinking of coming, and this is to Raj now that's asked the question, and studying a program like that, it's really look at the bigger picture. There's a lot more that comes with it, and I
Exactly.
think should wants to appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
Uh, there's more comments, more questions coming in here. There's Irena saying hi to you as well. Thank you for sharing your stories and insights. What a fascinating path. Really thrilled to have the chance to work with you now. You're a fantastic colleague.
As are you,
Great.
my dear.
As are you, yes. There was a question here a bit. Sorry, I skipped one. It's back there from Sally O'Brien. Doesn't, I think, well, let's see what she says. Question. So, with big two roles in sports organizations during the COVID pandemic, so you started the FISU now with the IOC. What would you say are the key learnings, takeaways from the last 2 years? I mean, at
Oh,
least your personal takeaways.
yeah, it's such a great question, Sally. Of course, had to come from you. Um, I think my biggest takeaway has been not don't take anything for granted. And I know that that's what the world is also, is grappling with currently, because you think one thing is over and then the next problem starts. But I think even from a professional point of view, and I'm sure that my colleagues who have been in event delivery, like games delivery and things like that, would have felt it even more. But I can certainly say from a communications point of view, you can have a fabulous, communications plan with all sorts of like your retro planning and your charts and everything. But if the events don't happen, which is what happened in the first year of COVID, everything goes straight into the dustbin. You cannot implement apps anything that you've planned. So for me, firstly, that was the biggest takeaway. Don't take things for granted. Always be on your toes, be ready to react, to be flexible, and have new and different ideas. And a second one that came through very strongly for me in these last 2 years is also really value your communities. And obviously when I say that, I'm speaking a little bit more in terms of like digital communities. But because of the pandemic, we've all had to kind of look a little bit more inward, and for a large part of it, people were locked in their rooms and in their homes, and there was so much going um, on just a really, really personal level. The fact that through some communication and through digital channels, we were able to engage those people, to really acknowledge those people. I think that was an invaluable lesson for me, and it really drives home the point that in communication, probably the most important thing is actually listening rather than saying. Because of course we say what we want to say, and this is our line and thing, but this pandemic really forced us to stop and listen. and really hear what people are saying, what they want to talk about, and start catering our communication towards that and just being more authentic. I think that these two have been the most important takeaways for me.
That's great. That's great, Tina. Um, Raj here, thanks for answering. If you gave a few more names, would be helpful so I can explore some more. I'm actually going to give him a tip. Raj, if you go here to later on iWorkinSport.com/EVE, that's for Education Virtual Expo, we have an event next one was going to be in April. We had a slight technical issue, so we're postponing a few weeks. We're going to announce soon the new date. But that's an event where we bring many of those programs in one place. So the AISTS, the FIFA Masters, the Columbia University will be in the next one, the SBS, Johan Cruyff Institute. There are many. Also on our website, there's a section called Learning, where we list some of them as well. But check that out. It's free to register. Go there and attend that event so you can talk to the admissions teams from each of those programs directly. Tina, we talked quickly before the call, and you said that you had a few funny stories. I said, do you have, covering, I think your friends already, mentioned some interesting stories in your journalistic career.
Yeah.
But is there one that you carry and normally tell people, oh, you can't believe that that happened in sport?
Yeah, I trust me, I have a few, there's quite a few. As you said, we already talked about one or two of them. Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many like really hilarious moments, and especially when you've been like working in live video news, television news for most of your professional life. Of course, there's massive opportunities for all sorts of gaffes and, faux pas and things like that. But for me, really the top moment, and this is really embarrassing because a lot of people are going to be horrified, is when I was asked on the eve of a massive concert to fly to Mumbai and interview Coldplay. Now, my friends, some of it, who have tuned in, know that my understanding of music and affinity towards music is like close to zero. So I don't really listen to a lot of music. I have very set like things from the 90s which I listen to, and so, of course, being a news person and anchor, I know that, I knew Coldplay and I know that they're huge, but I had literally never heard a single one of their songs. And I was sent for this super high profile, massive exclusive interview. No other channel had the opportunity to have this one on one with Chris Martin. And I was, I was sitting with my friends the night before flying, friends who like normal people who listen to Coldplay, and we were all sitting around this table and we were doing this like Coldplay 101 class, and they're telling me about the songs, and okay, this song is like this and this song is like this and this means this, and I was cramming like you would cram for an exam. And I was so nervous, and I never in all those years as an anchor I never got nervous. And I was so nervous before the interview because I was like, he's gonna see through me in 5 minutes and realize that I'm faking it because this is all superficial information. And then Chris Martin walks into the room, and then he sits down with me and he says that, is there something you want to like, I don't know, just discuss before the cameras roll. And I just broke completely. And I said, you know what? I'm so sorry. I don't know any of your songs. I don't know any of the lyrics. I've never listened to your music. And it ended up being one of the best interviews that I've ever had in my very long career. We had a blast. It's out there
How
on
did he
YouTube, you guys.
react?
Oh, he could not stop laughing for 5 minutes, and then we kind of plotted together how we are going to do the interview so that I don't look like a complete idiot on air. And he really helped me through it. It was fabulous, and yeah, it's really a great interview. You guys should go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's hilarious, and you will see that there's something going on behind the surface or beneath the surface. It was basically like me telling him, I'm so sorry, I don't know you at all. That was, I think, one of the
I'll
most
try to look
embarrassing
for
ones.
it and tag it somewhere here or there,
Okay.
and so people can watch it. Well, Chris Martin, you seem to be a very nice guy. Well done.
Yeah,
But
he was
when
great.
you're talking about interviews, and then Alex just read my mind because Pablo mentioned that you interviewed Pelé,
Yeah.
and how was that? I wish I had interviewed Pelé.
Well, that was amazing. And then, but that was completely in my comfort zone. So it was great.
When was it?
I think this was 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
In Brazil?
It was around the time that no, he had actually come to India because he was on a promotional tour for this. There was this film that came out.
Yeah,
So I could be maybe slightly wrong about the year, but it was around the time he was doing a promotional tour for this film. And
right.
again, I was just I was just really lucky that I happened to be working for the number one channel in the country at the time. So naturally, the exclusive interview with Pele for this promotional tour would come to our channel, and I got to interview him. And I think what struck me most about him, it was a wonderful interview, and we did a long one like this one, like an hour, and we really talked about everything, his career and his life, and his impressions of different cultures around the world. But what struck me the most was how humble he is, and like just the humility, and how humble he was, and how nice he was, and how he was really he really wanted to talk to me about like just Indian culture and football in India, and he was knowledgeable. He knew what was happening in the Indian Super League and things like that. So I think for
Oh
me that
wow.
was it was wonderful. I loved it. Yeah.
The king, long live the king, is not doing so well in terms of health nowadays. I do have a signed shirt well, in my other apartment in Lausanne. I'm speaking from Portugal at the moment. But yeah, that's a great story too. Thanks for that, Alex, as well for sending the message. Another message here. We're actually, I can't believe it's almost like an hour past. So I'm going to try to go fast. Frédéric Jamoli says, Dear Tina, like Irina, I'm delighted to have you as a colleague for who you are as a person and what you bring to our projects. Man, you are loved, Tina. You're the most popular
The
person I
love
have
is
here in the show.
mutual.
My question is, or her question is, our programs are aimed at both sports fans and art and culture lovers. What is the biggest challenge in addressing such different target audiences? And by the way, are they so different?
Such a great question. It's I think initially on the face of it, it looks like it's really a challenge because your traditional sort of art audiences would be extremely different from your traditional sport audiences, and that's really my brief or my challenge, my work is to be able to somehow bridge that gap and be able to come out with global communications that appeals to everyone across the spectrum. um, it's not always easy to do that, and there's certainly certain topics which will appeal more to one set of people and certain topics that will appeal more to the other set. I think the key here is a little bit of consistency, and I think that and that's really what, as you know, Frederick, is it's the work in progress right now to kind of develop an editorial voice, so to speak. So, and it's a really unique, we have a very unique spot. It's really only us that kind of bridges this world where we are the Olympics, but we're also arts and culture and heritage and all those things. So I think it's the key is cultivating that unique voice further. And I think when you have something unique, I think you can appeal to a cross section of people, because even if it's not something that is of their immediate interest, I think something that's unique and different always catches people's attention, and at least it will make people sit up and notice. And I think that we managed to do that a little bit with our arts and culture program at the Tokyo 2020 Games, because we really did see that there was a kind of there was a very good response from mainstream media, from the sports covering media as well, but also from the arts and culture media. And I think that we touched a sweet spot there. We only scratched the surface at that time, and that's really the direction that we have to develop a little bit further, where we can really speak in this unique voice, and then and be able to touch everyone because of that. Because it's only us doing what we do, and there's almost no one else out there doing that. So I think that puts us in a challenging but very, very interesting position.
Well, that's great answer. As I said, we just passed the hour mark. It flew by. If I could, can I have another maybe one or two questions just before we go?
Sure.
Before I do that, for people that are still here watching this with us, if you're enjoying it, hit that like button. I forget to ask people to do that. And if you like that type of content as well, if you want to subscribe to the channel so you get informed for the next ones. But Tina, and in terms of a sporting moment, I don't know if it was a cricket game. You said that you're a cricket fan, or meeting a big hero, or what was it in your career? What would you say was your favorite sporting moment?
I think in the career there have been many, and then I would like to talk about a moment which way preceded my career, because that was career defining for me. And there's one person in the world who's witness to this, which is my sister. It was during the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games, and I was well. I can't reveal my age. So I was like 13, 14 years old, and totally into sport. Like, I was that sport fanatic kid, and I was watching the games. So I and then there was this one moment where it was the 1500-meter freestyle swimming race, and Australia's Kieran Perkins won that race by what in at Olympic level was a mile. It was like 5 or 6 seconds, if I remember. He broke his own world record, and I don't know why it was that moment. I'm getting goosebumps even as I talk about it right now. But I was watching that race, and I was watching what I believe really, and I truly believe it to this day, is that highest or elite level of sport is truly the embodiment of one kind of human perfection. It's the best that we can be as human beings in that particular aspect, in that physical aspect. And I was watching this race, and I got goosebumps, and I told my sister, and I was like, yeah, 13 years old or something, and I told my sister that um, I'm going to work for the Olympics one day, So it took me a really long time to get here, but I finally got there. So that has to be my favorite moment, because it kind of set the tone for my life.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Listen, I'll tell my last question, and I'll give you some time to think about it, because I always ask my guests here to recommend a book to the audience. So maybe if you think about it, because there's a comment from Pablo here. So he says, I'm not sure if you already discussed this. From your perspective and having the experience of the Olympic Games in Tokyo, what was the legacy for Tokyo from an arts and culture perspective?
I think that's a very easy answer, really. Thank you for the question, Pablo. The arts and culture program at Tokyo had many aspects to it, but one of the primary aspects, and really the flagship part of the program, was in fact a legacy sculpture, which it was commissioned by the Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage from a world-renowned artist like Xavier Villon, the French sculptor. And he created a life-size sculpture depicting, the spectator, sort of the missing hero of the Tokyo Games. So it was really poignant in that sense, and it's a permanent sculpture which is stationed in a really busy square in the heart of Tokyo, and it's there for posterity, and it's there as a permanent marker of not only the Olympic Games, but also the cultural legacy of those games. So I think that something like that is an invaluable contribution, cultural contribution to the Olympic movement. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I thought it was a great answer. I hope Pablo liked it as well. Anyway, Tina, before we go, do you have a book to recommend to our audience?
Oh yeah, the book. Yeah, I'm big on sport autobiographies, and I've read many of them. But I think the one that is always top of my list is Open by Andre Agassi. So if you haven't read it, please go and read it. Even if you don't like sport, please go and read it, because it is so raw, it is so emotional, it is so completely honest that for me, reading that book for the first time, and I've read it a few times over, I think like a couple of chapters in, I literally felt like I had been punched in the gut, because it was so astoundingly honest, and you rarely see that level of honesty. I loved it. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Funny, I just started a couple of days ago, and because this is the third time that it's been recommended here, so it must be a very good book.
Oh, really? Okay.
Very good book. I think it was Bernardo Palmero, also from the AISTS, last week, recommended that, and Pierre Ducret
No, really?
at the IOC as well said this is fantastic. So
Okay, well, it is. Yes, I can endorse it completely.
I'll trust you. Just not to let Darsh P go. He says, is it worth to study study at AISTS now? What's
Well, Darsh, I don't know if you missed the part in the conversation earlier where I was saying that education is always worth it. Education is something that you're never going to regret. Upping your skills, upping your abilities, improving your knowledge is not something that I can ever say no to. So I can, for me, it's a no-brainer. Education is always going to help you in some way or the other.
all right? Thank you so much. And Alex here sums up what I wanted to say. It was really amazing listening to you.
Thank
It
you.
was great, awesome conversation. Thank you for doing this, for participating. I want to thank everybody as well that contributes. Put the comments there and ask questions.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Try to cover everyone and have everyone participating makes this very interactive. So that was great. Tina, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. It's really my pleasure and my privilege to be able to speak to you and everyone that joined us. I think it's thank you for the opportunity to also speak about the challenges of being a woman in not just this but any field, and a working woman and a mother and all of those things. So I'm glad I was able to talk about those things. So thank you for that.
Indeed. And so, well, I will definitely see you in Lausanne. I'll be doing an event there at the Olympic Museum. So I'll be
Wonderful.
there in a few weeks. So I'll look for you. Let's have a coffee there. Again, thanks everyone. If you're still here, if you want to contribute, if you buy a shirt like this, there's a link in the description. All the donations will go, all the proceeds will go to support the Red Cross in Ukraine. And was wonderful. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.